Hey everybody, welcome back to Kayfabe Critique. I'm David.
And I'm Jason.
And this week we're going to cover one of the most talked about, arguably the most controversial moment in the history of professional wrestling and sports entertainment. What are we going to cover, Jason?
We are clearly going to be talking about the gobbledygooker.
We're going to take you all the way back 21 years to Survivor Series 1997 with the Montreal Screwjob. But at Kayfabe Critique, we want to do it a little different. We know the Montreal Screwjob's been covered over and over and over. So instead of telling you what happened, because I'm sure everyone watching already knows what happens, we're going to cover the conspiracy theories out there. The Montreal Screwjob, was it a work or was it a shoot? So, but before we get to that, I have to say that you were right, I was wrong. When we did our SummerSlam Fallout, I thought for sure the heels coming out of it was going to be the Shield. I thought they were going to be the heels and Strowman was going to be the face. And they clearly made that switch on us. And you were right, you called it right on the money saying they were going to be the face.
They almost had to make Braun the face, their heel, because people wanted to cheer for the Shield. And you got to give the people what they want. I mean, that's just the age-old adage in wrestling. And putting Braun with Ziggler and McIntyre, it clearly turns him heel because it puts heat on them.
Which we did nail that. We did say that was a possibility of making them a team to go up against the Shield. So we got that right, but I clearly thought they were going to try to go with an NWO, the bad guys that everybody loved.
Yeah.
So for tonight's topic, the Montreal Screwjob, let's talk about the guys involved. We had two legendary performers, Bret the Hitman Hart and the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. In my opinion, two of the best of all time.
Oh, indeed, two of the best of all time, if not the best of all time. I mean, Shawn Michaels, to me, is the best of all time. I mean, I've seen him wrestle in person, I've read his book, I mean, I've watched him work ever since like 1988 in WWE. I mean, just phenomenal. Same with Bret, but with Bret Hart, I mean, it's, to me, I was just thinking about this earlier today. It's like Magic. They're like kind of like the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird of professional wrestling. I mean, they elevated each other, and they changed the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think they were both amazing performers. Shawn is my favorite of all time. Bret's also one of my favorites. Shawn is the favorite though. But like you were saying, how you talked about Magic and Bird, how they always went together in history. Shawn and Bret are linked forever in wrestling history. A lot of it's because of this, but there was also a lot of parallels to each other's career. So we could go back and look at, both tag team specialists going against each other as the Hart Foundation versus the Rockers.
Right.
We can even talk about when they broke out singles around the same time and had rivalries for the Intercontinental title. But I think where it's important to start this story is WrestleMania 12.
Oh, definitely WrestleMania 12. I mean, 1996 is one of those years where we'll talk about in a future episode that I think is one of the most pivotal years in the history of the wrestling business. And that match at WrestleMania 12 was probably one of those matches that you can point to and say, this is one of those places where the game really started to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you think of Bret Hart leading into WrestleMania 12, we know where he is now, we know how his career ended up, but when you talk about Bret going into WrestleMania 12, a multiple-time tag team champion with his late brother-in-law, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the original Hart Foundation, multiple-time Intercontinental champion, and here, going into WrestleMania 12, a three-time WWE champion. If Bret's career ended at that point, had he not returned, say Lonesome Dove kicked off, he would have been a tremendous actor, didn't return to wrestling ever, what would his legacy have been if his career ended right now?
If his career had ended at that point, he wouldn't be, I don't think he'd be remembered as one of the greatest of all time like he is now. I think that what happened when he came back, what he did, the work that he did with Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Screwjob obviously, and then the new Hart Foundation with Pillman and Owen and Bulldog and Neidhart, I think that stuff took him to another level because it actually showed enough more depth of his character.
I agree. I think the work he did in '96, late '96 and 1997 definitely took him into the top 5.
Right.
Where I think had his career ended at this point, he would definitely be mentioned as one of the best of all time, but not in that upper tier as he's often mentioned.
Right.
What are your feelings on, so a lot of people who side with Bret over the screw job, a lot of people who are Hitman empathizers, they really look at his title reigns leading up to WrestleMania 12. They point out that he was always, their belief was secondary in WWE, that he was the best at the time but not number 1 option. So they point out his first title reign wasn't on one of the regular scheduled shows. It wasn't a Saturday night's main event. It wasn't a pay-per-view. He won the first title against Ric Flair, but on a Coliseum home video exclusive. His second win, he didn't get the belt from Hogan. There wasn't a true passing of the torch.
Right.
Hogan dropped it to Yokozuna, Bret got it back from Yokozuna. And then in this, going into WrestleMania 12, he's having, Bret himself has said he was having great matches leading up to it, but he felt that he was just a transition champion because he knew all along he was keeping the belt warm for Shawn Michaels.
And I don't really like that term, transition champion. I mean, you're the champion. I mean, bottom line, you're the champ. I mean, and part of being the champ is making the next guy. I mean, if, let's say Shawn Michaels wins the title from, I don't know, Doink, that just popped into my mind. Who would have cared if he won the title from Doink at WrestleMania 12? I mean, but because he won it from the Hitman, it actually meant something. So, I mean, yeah, Bret was having great matches. I mean, I think he wrestled Bulldog during that time. He had the match, I think he had a cage match with Diesel. I think he had, I mean...
Yeah, so he takes the belt from Diesel. He has the match with Bulldog. So
right. Then he wrestled, I believe, Undertaker at one of the pay-per-views. Yeah.
So, I agree. Especially, we're talking just a year later. Shawn takes the belt from Bret at Survivor Series to just drop it to Austin at WrestleMania. You already know who the next champion is, and when you look at that, it's like, yes, Bret was a transitional champion. However, it was with a purpose in mind. Bret was leading. Shawn was the next star. They had to get the belt off Diesel. They had already had Shawn versus Diesel at WrestleMania before, and they knew that putting Bret and Shawn together was the match they were looking for. It was going to help Shawn showcase his abilities because of how great they both were in the ring.
Right, and I mean, Shawn Michaels couldn't have had an Iron Man match with anyone else at that time that was in WWE. I mean, maybe there was somebody in WCW could have happened with, but nobody in WWE really to work with.
Right, and they point out through that time of how great both guys are, how athletic of a match it should be. So I think they were really trying to give Bret his due, but at the same time, you don't want to make the guy that's exiting bigger than your new star, knowing that Bret's not going to be there. Shawn has to carry the ball.
Right, and one of the things that I've always heard, like even Triple H and people like that say, is the best type of matches are where both guys end up leaving the match better than they were when they walked in. And in my opinion, when both guys left WrestleMania 12, they both looked even better than they did when they walked into the ring.
And so, and with this first title match, I understand that, it wasn't televised, but at that time, there wasn't Monday Night Raw.
Right.
You had your Saturday morning show, your Sunday morning show, and you had prime time on Monday night, but it wasn't the same. It was all pre-taped. And I get you may have won for a Saturday night's main event, but you may not have had the time because of Flair's contract. But the biggest part that stands out to me is home videos were huge at that time.
Right.
It was a big profit moneymaker for WWE, and to be able to have a championship match, you can only see it on this Coliseum home video, was going to help drive more business in that direction.
Right.
So I never thought that was a slight to Bret. I thought that was really a business decision of how can we move even more videos.
And that's kind of how I looked at it too, and it also adds some of the shock value because most of your title changes at that time took place on one of the major pay-per-views. Now, keep in mind that Flair won the title back from Savage on Primetime Wrestling, which was a surprise, because you never saw that happen. I mean, I think I remember that match having to be restarted. I was listening to one of the podcasts, they were talking about that match had to be restarted because Vince didn't like something with the finish, but that's neither here nor there. But the fact that the title changed on primetime wrestling, that was an indication that, okay, we got to start doing something different because we're starting to lose the audience. So we got to start doing things that normally happen on pay-per-view on regular TV because we got to keep people watching and we got to keep people buying these videos. So hence, let's put a title change on the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel his grief over his second title.
Yeah.
I feel that Hogan was the biggest star of the '80s, arguably the biggest star of all time. And here was a chance to clearly pass the torch to the future. And whether it was Vince McMahon who said, he didn't think they needed to work together, that Hulk needed a monster, or if it was Hulk, I do side with Bret on this one that they should have made that match happen.
I agree that they should have made that match happen. And I see it from both sides. I see Hogan not wanting to work with anybody that's not a monster. And I also can kind of see Hogan not wanting to tap out to the sharpshooter because he might feel like it diminishes him. But at the same time, you got to do what's right for the business. And Bret winning the title from Yokozuna at WrestleMania 10, it was big. However, if he had won it from Hogan, everybody wins in that situation.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So the flip side of this match, Shawn Michaels. So Shawn doesn't have the pedigree of Bret Hart coming into the match. He had been a tag team champion. He had done tag team work in the Rockers, but ended up being a tag team champion as part of Dudes with Attitudes with Diesel. He'd been a multiple-time Intercontinental champion.
Right.
And he had won a couple Royal Rumbles, the last two back-to-back. Was there a bigger, hotter star than Shawn Michaels at that point?
Nope. Not at all. And also during this time, keep in mind, you remember this is coming off that concussion angle.
Right.
This is one of those angles where the creative direction of WWE WWF at the time went into a direction where, oh man, we're starting to blur the lines a little bit. I mean, they dropped the mics. They sold this thing so well with the concussion, and this is again one of those areas where it's like, okay, we're starting to do things a little bit differently now. We're starting to get a little bit more edgy with our storytelling because we've got to keep the audience interested and invested. And to have a guy pass out in the ring, and even Owen Hart is like, oh crap, he thinks the guy's dead. That's an area that they had never gone into.
Yeah, and then going into this, it's interesting to look at how you hear stories like, Bruce Pritchard talk about how him and Pat Patterson, they kept pushing Shawn Michaels the guy. And it took Vince McMahon a couple years to recognize, okay, Shawn is the guy. And wrestling reporters at the time, I wish I could remember the exact article, but there were articles out there saying Shawn was too good to be number 2 any longer.
Yeah.
And so I feel that this match, WrestleMania 12, was a perfect setup to give him that time.
Right, and if you're going to even go back even to the year before, WrestleMania 11, even WrestleMania 10, who stole those shows?
Mm-hmm.
Ladder match with Razor, match with Diesel. The crowd really started to flip towards Shawn during the match with Diesel because of the stuff that Shawn was doing. And I believe it was at that point where Vince was like, that's when the light came on.
So we go into the match, WrestleMania 12, 60-minute Iron Man match to really show the athletic ability and the in-ring ability of both men. What did you think about the match?
I loved it. It's old school. It's not, it's not one of those matches that you would see back in the day where you got the two big dudes that can't do much of anything and they're just kind of slothing around the ring. It's got some of everything. There was a brawling aspect. There was legit athleticism shown from both guys. The conditioning alone to be able to go at it for an hour and a half. You got to be a legitimate athlete to be able to do what they do. we may think, well, it's fake, it's choreographed, but these dudes are legit athletes to be able to do this.
Yeah, still, I love the match. I mean, I like the story. I love the 60 minutes where neither could get the best of each other, so it had to go into overtime. Shawn picks up the victory. A lot of people start to question, though, at this moment, was there real heat between the two of them because of how the match ends?
Yeah.
So part of it is having to go into overtime. They really think Bret's mad about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that Bret was planning on leaving and not putting that into consideration. Of course he's dropping the belt, he's leaving. But then also the moment at the end where Shawn tells Earl to have Bret get out of the ring,
Right.
so Shawn can celebrate. What were your thoughts on those?
My thoughts were, and having viewed like the DVDs and everything that they talked about, everything kind of went according to their plan. I mean, Shawn really didn't mean anything by telling Bret to get out of the ring. I mean, they had to do things from a timing standpoint. I mean, they are filming basically live television, for lack of a better word. So, I mean, everything is kind of on the clock. So, Bret says that was the plan for him to leave without shaking Shawn's hand. I mean, he says it was planned for them to make people think that there was heat between the two. And I think that a lot of what was going on at that time was the internet was really just a baby, so there wasn't a lot of the information that we have now out there.
Right, yeah, there wasn't as much as you can find to find out and fact check stuff. But yeah, you're absolutely right that, Bruce Pritchard has said that they were limited on time, and they knew the celebration was supposed to be Shawn alone in the ring, and they knew they only had so much time, so he was kind of, like, all right, let's hurry up, let's get to this. But this is also where some of the conspiracy theorists come in. So, all right, conspiracy theorists, get your hats on, get ready. Traditionalists, try to stay with us, because we're going to start dropping some little bits and pieces here. But this is a part where Bret starts trying to work the boys. So after the match, Owen lets Bret know the next day, people believe there's real heat between you and Shawn, thinks you're mad at Shawn, and Bret tells him that's the best news ever, keep it going. So Bret's already trying to work the boys, trying to work the guys involved in creative. He's already trying to lay those pieces out because he believes that if they believe it's real, it's going to help carry on to future matches with him and Shawn.
Yeah, I mean, and the best stories that are told have an element of truth to them. So, and I mean, you can build all the storylines you want to, but if you can plug you can start a little room over here, room over there. I mean, you can make people think that there's really something going on, and you're Shawn and Bret are the two that are in on the joke, so to speak. I mean, why not?
So after this match, Bret leaves. He has time off. He goes to film Lonesome Dove. He also negotiates with WCW during this time.
Right.
During this time, we go into Shawn Michaels' reign. We see him have Diesel's last pay-per-view match is against Shawn.
At the crib, Omaha, Nebraska, baby.
He moves on and goes into 2 back-to-back matches with the Bulldog. Ends up having a program with Vader, match with Mankind, and then eventually will lead to Sid at Survivor Series. While Bret's out, Bret's continuing to make comments about Shawn. Some that get reported in dirt sheets, others, as WWE will check in on him, he kind of will drop little comments. So Bret's already feeding into his dislike of Shawn, kind of keeping this going for WrestleMania 12.
Yeah, and during that time, it wasn't common for the good guys to say bad stuff about the other good guys. I mean, all the good guys usually roll together. I mean, if one of the good guys was getting jumped, you'd see all the good guys come out of the locker room to protect him back in the day. But now you got some shade being thrown. I mean, Bret doesn't like the way Shawn has little kids come and dance with him in the ring and stuff like that. I mean, just little differences.
That comment kind of made me think. I always thought it was funny. Bret talks about Shawn kind of stripping with a kid in the ring, but that he danced with kids in the ring, but the times where he would kind of strip down in the ring, he was alone.
Right.
So I think that was kind of, trying to reflect on stuff years later and not accurately remembering what happened. But, so Bret returns.
Mm-hmm.
Survivor Series 96, he comes back, wanting to go against Austin. We all know how that rivalry went. That helped really make Austin. But as part of his comeback, he's dropping more comments on Shawn Michaels.
Yep.
Shawn still at this point hasn't really addressed it. He's more that he's happy Bret's back. The WWE's not the same without Bret Hart.
Right.
He goes into Survivor Series and loses to Sid to really build the next big pay-per-view, the Royal Rumble, in his hometown of San Antonio, kind of giving a showcase to reclaim the title from Sid. In between, though, there we have the December In Your House, Bret against Sid, where Shawn costs Bret the match, and we kind of see them go at it at the end. Kind of starting to add more fuel to the fire. And this, now going towards the Royal Rumble, and then after the Royal Rumble, are really when the promos between the two of them start heating up. And this is also where the feeling is that it goes from a working hatred towards each other to a real shoot, that they really start to have disdain for each other.
Yeah, because I think during that time, you also saw the crowd starting to change. I mean, if you remember that Survivor Series 96, the crowd was really not feeling Shawn.
And a lot of that could that a lot have been, he was the baby face, and he was the old school style white bread baby face,
right,
where on the other channel, they've just changed the game.
Right.
They've made reality and the heels are killing it, and they want edgy now, and that's bleeding over into WWE.
Right, and I mean, also in that Survivor Series 96, you heard quite a positive reaction for Stone Cold in his match with Bret. So I think there was just so much changing during that time. I think both guys were kind of looking at their characters and their relationships, so I think there was some pressure being felt.
And what's interesting is during that time when you look at kind of what started to bother the two of them about each other, Bret continues to make comments kind of questioning Shawn's sexual orientation. And Shawn reportedly, and Bret has said it as well, that Shawn had asked him multiple times, don't do that, I don't mind you saying this stuff, but don't say that stuff, it bothers my parents. But yet Bret kept doing it, saying, well, I'm not attacking him, I'm attacking his character.
Right.
But that seems a little more personal than attacking somebody's character.
It does seem a little bit more personal, and I can understand trying to attack the character. I can understand doing that. However, there's just certain lines you don't want to cross. And if someone's asking you, don't do this, why would you keep doing it?
And I also found it interesting that during this time, when you watch them when they get into promos, Bret will cut a lot in on Shawn. He'll deliver a lot of points out there about Shawn, but then every time Shawn goes to start to talk, Sid comes out, Austin comes out. Shawn never really, at that time, gets to say stuff back to Bret. It's almost like they cut him off. Do you think that was fear in the back of Shawn Michaels with a live microphone? What's he going to say? Or was that purposely done because they had to make Bret the heel in the rivalry between the two of them?
I think that they had to make Bret the heel, given the fact that of what was going to ultimately happen with him and Austin, with the direction that the business was going, because Austin was starting to get such a positive reaction in that feud, and they were moving into an era where were there really true baby faces and heels? It was kind of more depending on where you were. I mean, because I remember when they were in Canada, in Toronto, Shawn was the baby face technically, but the Toronto crowd, they're feeling Bret.
Right. Yeah, that was right after Royal Rumble 97, after Shawn wins the belt. Yeah, I remember that promo where, because Shawn compares himself to Muhammad Ali. Bret says, Muhammad Ali, I don't think so, Dennis Rodman, maybe.
Right.
So kind of more back to what Shawn's saying, don't go down that path, but here's Bret doing it again. And as Shawn starts to kind of fire back at Bret in that promo, out comes Austin, out comes Sid, and
Right.
it cuts him off again.
Right.
So, like we just said, Shawn wins the belt back at Royal Rumble 97. Technically, Bret should have been the winner of the Rumble.
Right.
Austin sneaks back in the ring, so it cuts it out. So it kind of adds more fuel to the fire, setting up the February pay-per-view. But before we can get there,
Shawn lost his smile.
Shawn loses his smile. So reports are he had a knee injury, legit knee injury. It's been covered multiple times. Everyone said it. He legitimately hurt his knee. Was told he may not ever wrestle again. And depending on who you talk to, there's belief that Shawn was supposed to drop the belt to Bret at WrestleMania 13. Bruce Pritchard has reported that he wasn't supposed to drop the belt to Bret. He was going to drop the belt to Sid on Tuesday Night Raw. Shawn, when sitting down and being interviewed with him and Bret, when Bret said that they were supposed to work together, Shawn said he had never heard they were supposed to work together. And he had said in his book that McMahon showed him, he may ended up working with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 13. So what are the thoughts around Shawn losing his smile? And do you think he was really set to go with Bret at WrestleMania, or were they going to push this out even further?
I'm of the belief that he was supposed to work with Bret at WrestleMania. I think they were trying to move towards more of a trilogy between those three, 12, 13, 14, which makes sense, but I just believe that with all plans, you had some monkey wrenches get thrown in. Shawn gets hurt. This was 1997. They didn't have the same technology in 2018 that they have to look at knees. So you got Shawn getting hurt. You got Stone Cold Steve Austin blowing up. So many variables took place. So even with Stone Cold blowing up, that probably changed the plans on that trilogy that they might have been thinking about too, because it's like you can't hold this thing back.
Yeah, see, I always thought he was going to work with Bret, and for the longest time I felt he was supposed to work with Bret for the title. But hearing that he was supposed to drop the title to Sid makes me think that Shawn and Bret had such a great match at WrestleMania 12. There's a lot of heat, a lot of focus at this time. He was supposed to work with Bret, but just not for the title. I think Sid was going to get the title at Tuesday Night Raw, go in to give an extra big match on WrestleMania. So that way you kind of stack it up even more.
I can see that. I can see that happening. I just think that, again, with the best laid plans, and obviously ended up working out better than anybody could have thought, but if Shawn and Bret had gone at it at WrestleMania 13, I don't think that Taker's match would have meant, Taker's win would have meant as much. So I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I can see that if they did go against each other and may have pulled away on the title, it definitely probably would have stole the show, just like Bret and Austin did.
Right.
So what always kind of threw me about this, and like I said earlier, Shawn's my favorite of all time. But when I look back at this, I always wondered if he's going to drop the belt to Sid, and it's going to be on a Raw, so it didn't have to be the greatest of matches. Why not add a little more heat to this, just in case he was able to come back and have Bret attack him backstage? So the cameras turn on, you find out Bret attacked him backstage. That's what hurt his knee. He stumbles to the ring because he's the gutsy champion, but he can't really go because of his knee. Sid lands a powerbomb, quick match, over. Sid's got the belt. But if he comes back, he's got revenge on his mind against Bret.
Yeah, and I also think that that could have worked, but you also don't want to make Sid's title win illegitimate. Because, again, you're thinking about Sid's one of the great workers in the business, and if you're going to go with Taker at WrestleMania 13, because I think that they have that in their mind already, you want it to look as good for Taker winning the title as possible, which it did.
Yeah, and they said, Shawn made that comment that he knew he couldn't give his best, and he didn't want to have a match that was under his best.
I can respect that.
But at the same time, it kind of throws me off because just a year after this, he's got a much more severe injury in his back, but goes out there and completely gives it all to put Austin over.
I think it speaks more to maybe that heat between Bret and Shawn, that he didn't want to, he didn't want to lose the belt, and he didn't want to do it. Maybe he was supposed to lose the belt to Bret, who knows? But in '98, he also had the Tyson factor. There was more money involved.
So, we go into WrestleMania 13. Bret steals the show with Austin, has a great match. Mm-hmm. Before the main event, Bret comes out, Shawn's sitting at the announcer's table, cuts a promo on Shawn. Mm-hmm. And so, what was interesting here is now we have a turn. Mm-hmm. We have Shawn returns on Raw. We have Bret kind of turn heel at the end of WrestleMania 13. Mm-hmm. Shawn returns on Raw shortly after that, and he goes in and cuts a promo on Bret. He talks about Bret negotiating with WCW while he's gone, mm-hmm. and how he was going to leave Vince McMahon high and dry, and how Bret brings his family involved. He basically takes advantage of his family to further his own financial gain. And reports are that Bret gets really upset with this promo, saying Shawn took it to a personal level. Mm-hmm. But does that feel any more personal than the stuff Bret was saying about Shawn prior to this?
No, it doesn't. And what did he say that wasn't true?
Right. And so, so that was kind of always threw me off of why was that promo to Bret personal, but everything he said that when Shawn was asking, don't say this stuff, he did any different.
Right. It's starting to sound like a hip-hop beef for real. It's like, you had the Tupac Biggie beef going on right before this, and unfortunately, both of them passed away, but this is starting to sound a lot like that. Bret says something, Shawn claps back. Bret says something else, Shawn claps back. But again, they're clapping back with elements of truth.
Okay. And so you have, during this time, the Hart Foundation, the new Hart Foundation forms. Mm-hmm. Shawn returns, him and Austin team up, they go against the Bulldog and Owen, and they start to build towards Shawn and Bret, King of the Ring.
Right.
And the challenge is laid out. Bret has to beat Shawn in 10 minutes. And all of the Hart Foundation will be handcuffed to the ring post.
You know why I'm laughing.
I do know why you're laughing. And Shawn makes a comment of, you couldn't beat me in 60 minutes, what makes you think you can beat me in 10? It goes further that, I heard you can't go 10 minutes in any situation.
If you know what I mean.
If you know what I mean, even though you've had some sunny days lately. Oh. And so, it's well documented now that Shawn and Sonny had a relationship.
Right.
He believed there was a relationship with Bret and Sonny at that time. Mm-hmm. Sonny's denied it, Bret's denied it. In her book, she does state that her and Bret did kiss once. There was kind of intentions there. She called him to her hotel room. They kissed, but it didn't go anywhere. And so, maybe that was it because, according to her, Shawn did ask her to move in with them before she decided to stay with Chris Candido. So maybe there was a little, he heard that somebody saw Bret go to her room, he heard about it, he cuts this promo.
Right.
So, we know where this leads. This leads to Bret having problems at home because of this promo, fight backstage. Never really been any punches thrown, but it's more of a grappling, and Shawn's hair gets yanked out, and they both get sent home.
Right. And to be fair, I read Bret's book, and he talks about some cheating on his wife in his book. So it's not like he hasn't stepped out on his then wife before. So it's not like Shawn is just pulling this out of nowhere.
When Shawn had hit him with a comment before in a promo of, I've seen you on the road, and bro, you ain't no role model. And now he's throwing out the sunny days comment, so you can see where, Bret's family at home watching this can definitely be like,
right,
is there something there? So this, to me, definitely took it personal.
Yeah, there's no other way you could do that. That's definitely personal.
So, King of the Ring's off.
Right.
Shawn's gone for a while. Reports are it's because his lawyer reports that it's because his knee was re-injured with the fight with Bret backstage. So he's out. SummerSlam's rolling around. Bret going for his 5th championship against The Undertaker. And Shawn comes back to be the special referee. We know from watching Wrestling with Shadows, Bret was a little concerned that he had been built up to be the top heel, but yet Shawn's going to come back and cause Taker the match, and he feels like Shawn's going to scoop his heel.
Which I can understand the concern there, but I think that during that time, you got to think about the team, because WCW's over there whooping their ass. There's no other way to say it. But the 97, WCW's coming off Bash at the Beat with Hogan, The Rock versus Luger and the Giant. I mean, WCW is just killing WWF. So, I mean, it's a big show. It's one of the big four. You got to come out with everything.
And so, thinking of that way, not only that, but Austin was turning face.
Right.
The crowd was loving Austin. He turned face at WrestleMania. He's now one of your top baby faces. The Undertaker's one of your top baby faces. Sid's kind of in and out. It was softball season, so Sid's kind of in and out. You really needed that other heel.
Right.
To expand so you had more than just one big match on the show, you needed that other heel.
Right, and during that time, I think that, with all due respect to Bret, between 95, 96, and 97, who could touch Shawn Michaels? I mean, who could Shawn Michaels... Name a bad Shawn Michaels match during that time.
Right, yeah, I mean, I know he was gone a lot of 97. I mean, 96 was tremendous for him, but I've always felt 97, in ring, his matches, was some of the best matches we've ever seen.
Right. I mean, no doubt.
Yeah, and especially when you look at it, at that time you had The Undertaker, who's still to this day one of the biggest stars ever, Shawn Michaels, who's been killing it, and they had never faced each other.
Right.
So this was a way to set up another big rivalry.
Right, and man, did they set that rivalry up.
And so during this time, as Shawn's feuding with The Undertaker, we see Bret now, 5-time champion, has some run-ins with the Patriot, things like that, and he's really pushing the Canadian angle of Canada versus USA. And during this time, Vince McMahon sits down and asks to restructure Bret's contract.
Right.
Saying he can't afford to pay Bret all the money. Basically wanted to restructure, set it up, less money at certain intervals, but to carry it out longer, have Bret working backstage, etc.
Right.
You know, some people have questioned, well, he's able to pay Mike Tyson a bunch of money just shortly after this, but not really the same. It was more of, this is your promotion, your advertisement money, this is your payroll budget. He pulled from this, knowing that Tyson's going to bring in a bunch of media outlets that are going to give them basically free advertisement.
Absolutely. I mean, you got this. You do that. I mean, if you got a chance to use Mike Tyson for something, you do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
and if you don't, a lot of people now may not remember or may not have been around to understand the power of Mike Tyson at that time. You couldn't put him on a show, like anytime Sports Center or anything, CNN, SI used to be on the air, anytime they were going to cover him, anything live, people tuned in. He was the pay-per-view king.
right.
You know, everyone tuned in to see Mike Tyson. He was the most recognizable athlete on the planet at that time.
He was. I mean, the pay-per-view wise, he drew buy rates. I mean, most recognizable. I mean, I gotta put my boy Michael Jordan up there. I mean, but both of the Mikes were. I mean, but Tyson. I mean, 59.99. You wanted to see him fight. I mean, but you never knew what was going to happen. I mean, somebody was probably going to get knocked out, but you wanted to see it.
Right, and so, to me, that always made sense. And if it had not brought in Mike Tyson, we might all be watching Nitro right now.
Right.
And so, during this time, we also see Degeneration X form. And it leads us to the build-up for Survivor Series 97, going into Montreal. And this is where the story kind of varies. We've heard, Bret say that he didn't want to lose in Montreal. We hear him say that, all his time, which is said on Wrestling with Shadows, that he spent so much time being a hero for Canada, building up, that he felt if he lost in Montreal, he was going to come up short.
Right.
We've also heard him say that the reason he didn't want to lose to Shawn was because he had went to Shawn and said, hey, sorry things got the way they were between us. Just to let you know, I'm willing to put you over. And Shawn makes a comment, well, I'm not willing to do the same for you. Shawn says he doesn't remember making that comment, but he doesn't deny that it may have happened.
Right.
So, you have, at that time, your champion with the belt not wanting to lose. You have your rival organization, the organization that is beating you and beating you for consistently over a year at this point. WWE looking to, had been struggling financially. They're starting to gain a little more.
Right.
They increased the price of their pay-per-view. That's helping bring in more revenue.
Right.
So they're starting to pick up a little more steam, but they're still number 2.
Right.
And so the fear is Bret Hart walking into Nitro as the champion. Now, some people say, well, Bret wouldn't have took the belt with him, but take the physical belt aside. Had he not lost walking into WCW, WCW just gained the champion. Because they can always sell it of, he's never lost, no one ever took the belt from him, he is the linear champion, he is the true champion, and now he's on our show.
Yeah, and they definitely could have done that. I should just had another thought. But yeah, they definitely could have done that. Another wrinkle, though, in that whole scenario is in Bret's contract, he had creative control.
Yes.
So he did have a leg to stand on in not wanting to lose in Canada.
And so, you had Medusa walk in, drop the belt in the trash in WCW. Now you're taking your biggest championship and the fear that he's going to Nitro. When they couldn't come to terms of restructuring his contract, McMahon opened up for him to renegotiate with Bischoff.
Right.
Get the contract in place. We know he's going to Nitro. And whether Bret would have done it or not was to stop one of the announcers from going off cuff or Bischoff himself to be in the ring and say he's the real world champion. And so that's where Vince McMahon's concern comes in. And so he needs to make sure the title comes over. And so that leads to Survivor Series 97. And when we think about the match starts outside the ring.
Right.
They start fighting in the ring, it quickly goes to the outside, bell doesn't ring, so they can skirmish around the outside, get the fans involved, and really build up the hatred towards each other of a brawl instead of a match.
Right. I'm just looking at Shawn, like, this nigga get flag to wipe his nose and doing the cross chop at the flag. There's just so much about this whole thing that was just so well done. When you think about the production value of, like, the whole build up to them walking towards the gorilla position with the stuff in the back, that was just so cool. Everything about this match was so well done. To think that these two guys who have this beef, but rumor does have it that they got together right like that day before and kind of, tried to squash some stuff, and that made it even harder for Shawn to do what happened. But, these guys, they went out there and put on still another masterpiece. A different masterpiece from '96, but still a masterpiece in my opinion.
Yeah, and so you had, like you said, both of them talked about, they got together earlier that day, they talked it out. Bret suggested the sharpshooter spot. Shawn uses that, runs back and says, this is when we can do it. And the night before, Gerald Briscoe teaches Shawn some grappling holds, just in case when it happens, if Bret starts trying to fight him, he can defend himself.
Right.
And so we know how the match goes down. Vince is out of ringside. As we can see here, he's out trying to get them into the ring, hovering around ringside. Vince is out there. The minute Shawn puts Bret into the sharpshooter. Vince calls for the bell. At the same time, Earl Hebner's calling for the bell. As Shawn's music's playing and the bell's ringing, you can see Bret reversing the hold.
Right.
Shortly after that, you see the look of confusion on Bret's face. Suddenly, it dawns on him what happened, and that confusion quickly turns to, I can't believe this, gets up, spits at Vince. Shawn walks out of the ring, mad, yelling at Vince. Turns out, all these years later, we find out that Shawn knew about it. So, do you remember seeing this, and what was your thoughts when that ending happened?
I vaguely remember seeing it, and my thoughts were it just seemed really weird because, I mean, JR and King didn't know what was going on. I mean, I felt a lot like they did. It's like, I don't know what I just saw. I mean, it was kind of like you're seeing it was like, okay, that wasn't supposed to be that way.
Yeah, I remember watching it, and Shawn's music hits, and I remember kind of laughing to myself as Bret's kind of reversing it, like, they messed up. Shawn was supposed to win, but he wasn't supposed to win there.
Right.
So, we know where this goes from there. We know Bret gets upset, starts breaking monitors, writes WCW in the air. Bret's gone.
Don't forget the part where he knocks Vince out in backstage.
Yeah, so Bret's, they go backstage. They have their scuffle. He punches Vince, drops Vince, and then Bret's gone. Vince later on is going to come out. He's going to have the Bret screwed Bret speech on Raw and really start building towards the Attitude Era.
Right.
So, everyone, like Bruce Pritchard, everyone has talked about this moment and that if it was a work, that they've been worked as well. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through some of the theories out there, some points on how this could possibly have been a work, and have we all been pulled in the whole time.
Bring it.
Alright, so, let's start with in general. Wrestling itself is a work. It's a show, everything's choreographed. And Vince McMahon, arguably one of the greatest storytellers in the history of the world. And so, you're leading into a situation that both the company, Bret, and Vince all benefited from. So, Bret was able to go to WCW with a hot angle, with a lot of interest around him. He was able to get to WCW and make even more money. Vince was able to use this moment to kind of pull attention in. And so, let's start walking through some of these moments. So, one of the things that goes around online is, why would Vince put the belt around Bret with contract uncertainty? And with that, why wouldn't he have pulled the belt off of him a lot sooner if this wasn't legit? Like, if he really knew, okay, Bret's leaving, I'm going to pull the belt off of him sooner, because in his contract, he has creative control. Why wouldn't Vince have pulled the belt off of him sooner than that?
Well, if you want to pull a belt off somebody during this period, you want to do it with as many eyeballs as possible.
But could you have went with, you just had Ground Zero, Shawn versus The Undertaker.
Right.
Could you have really just put Shawn and Bret at that time? Or, at Ground Zero, Bret had just spit in Shawn's face. Shawn was trying to hit Bret with a chair. Could Shawn have got the match with Bret at Ground Zero with the winner going on to face Taker? Or even a triple threat match that gets the belt off of Bret and then sets up Shawn and Taker?
You could have, however, I think that creatively, the way that they were going, the match to go with at Ground Zero was Shawn and Taker, which ultimately ended up leading to the Hell in a Cell match with Shawn and Taker. So I think that, again, you could have, but they needed that Shawn and Taker match to kind of build. Shawn needed to be built up a little bit more before the match with Bret.
So what about thinking of Wrestling with Shadows? the documentary was done. And Bret called the film crew and said, you should really come back and film this stuff for Survivor Series. It's going to be really big. So he brought the cameras in to have the backstage. And when he brings the cameras back around that time, and he has the cameras, asks the cameras to turn themselves off, when he goes to talk to his wife about renegotiating with WCW. So here's a guy that wears a microphone in to talk to Vince McMahon, lets the cameras film him on everything else, but yet conveniently when he's about to talk about how Vince is going to let him out of his contract, he asks them to turn the cameras off.
Never thought about that.
So let's go a little bit further. Bruce Pritchard says he was working Gorilla. He says that when the bell starts ringing, he's like, wait, what's going on? That's not it. We still have more to come. Bulldog and Owen are up there. They're supposed to be running out. Hunter and China is supposed to be following shortly. Or maybe that was vice versa. But he's confused at what's going on with Gorilla. But isn't the guy in Gorilla the one who signals the music? And if that wasn't the ending, why did Shawn's music ring perfectly as the bell rang?
Another good question. You're really starting to make me think that this might have been work. I'm still leaning shoot, but I can see where some of the conspiracy theorists are coming from with this, because it is starting to. I see your point.
So, and think about it this way. Vince knows where he's wanting to go. They're already talking to Mike Tyson. Austin's already on the rise. Austin's going to be big. DX is really starting to pick up traction. You can feel the Attitude Era coming. Bret's contract isn't that long with WCW. Bret leaves. By doing this, Bret looks strong. He goes to WCW. He gets his money. When he comes back, Austin's still young. Shawn's still young. This is before his back got injured, so thoughts are he would still be there. Bret would be able to be coming back into WWE with a lot of heat, and his two biggest rivals would still be there. And it also sets up a brand new character for him to have heat with, the evil Mr. McMahon, because on the other channel you had already seen that turning the person who runs the company into an on-screen character with Eric Bischoff worked.
Again, yeah, I can see that. These theories are not they're not too far fetched. I'll say that. Because you did have Bischoff turn on the other channel. Bret's contract was what, 3 years, $8.4 billion or something like that.
So I had heard 3 years, but then we had also heard, I believe it was something to wrestle with, I hope I'm not quoting that wrong, said it was actually only 2 years.
Maybe an option for a third?
Potentially. And so when you think about kind of that point I was making, with Austin on the rise and his character being anti-authority, and the WWE he feels they're trying to hold him down because of his neck injury during that summer, and he stuns Mr. McMahon and the crowd goes crazy. And this was before you had the Mr. McMahon character. But now, you have a reason to build a Mr. McMahon character and make it even hotter to go against Austin.
Yeah, I just don't. Vince McMahon is smart. I just don't know that I don't know that anybody's that smart. Sometimes you just use things to your advantage. But
And so we've heard that they said multiple people had said it, but Vince Russo had Vince McMahon's ear and pushing young male demographic, the Attitude Era.
Right.
Vince wanting to go in this direction. They're feeling this is what's going to pull the eyes away from WCW.
Right.
Bret didn't fit the Attitude Era.
No.
So is this a way to take one of your biggest stars away as you can rebuild the company, and then once you're back established, slide him back in?
It is a way, and thinking long term, possibly that's something that they may have been thinking about. Unfortunately, it didn't get the chance to turn out that way. But I can definitely, Bret didn't fit with the direction that they were going in. I think even on the Wrestling with Shadows, it's like you had your number one heel, Shawn. You got your number one babyface, Austin now. It's like Bret really didn't fit anymore. I mean, it's like, what am I going to do with you? Plus, the U.S. fans hate you. I mean, so really, what you spent like most of 1997 trashing the United States. So what am I going to do with you?
So could that have been a cool-off period? You know what? We put you over in WCW. It cools the U.S. fans down. When you come back, because everyone's big on a return, they'll forgive you and love you.
Right. I mean, yeah, could have.
All right, so let's go to wrestling to business. Businesses are about making money.
Right.
The revenue generation based off of this. Wrestling with Shadows, the documentary. Would that documentary have been worth anything had this not happened?
Nope.
Bret's book. Would Bret have had as interesting of a story without this?
It's interesting, but adding this Montreal aspect and also his time at WCW definitely, I mean, even the unfortunate way that it ended, it definitely added to his story.
Video sales of the Survivor Series 97 because of this.
It was so long you couldn't find it.
The replay of the pay-per-view because of this. WWE specials because of this.
I mean, how many have there been? I mean, there was WWE Confidential, which is the one where Shawn first admitted, okay, yeah,
Right.
I had something. I mean, I knew it all along. I was in on it. I mean, so.
And we know controversy brings attention, controversy creates cash. This was controversial. It was going to get eyes in there. And so let's go a little bit further. Bret Hart's under contract with WCW, but he shows up to a house show in 1999 for WWE. It's backstage.
And I've heard that story. I mean, all the guys didn't screw Bret. I mean, he still had some friends back there. I mean, I believe he was friendly with Mick Foley, and he may have been friendly with Austin. I mean, Bret was gone then, so there wasn't anything to worry about with that. I mean, I say Bret was gone. I mean, Shawn was gone, so there was nothing going on with that. So, I mean, from what I understand, it's not that uncommon.
So what about, but did you ever hear about Hall and Nash showing up backstage during that time? I mean, they still had friends there.
Did they have,
So they left in 96, but did they ever pop over in 97 to say hi to Shawn and Triple H or X-Pac? X-Pac was gone, but he came back in 98. Typically when guys left, they didn't really cross those lines.
Typically they didn't. I think that with Bret, I believe that I believe that there was some guilt felt by WWE because of how things ended, and I think that, depending on how things were going at WCW during that time, Bret might have just needed to see some friendly faces. But I understand Vince wasn't there that night either.
So let's go a different route. On the 20th anniversary, November last year, Sports Illustrated actually wrote an article questioning if it was a hoax.
I remember reading that.
And there's also, Joe Dombrowski has a DVD, a 6-disc DVD, 6-hour DVD called The Montreal Theory, which is all based on elements that he believes that the Montreal Screwjob was at work. Jerry the King Lawler, to this day, says he wouldn't be shocked. He believes it was work, and he wouldn't be shocked if Vince and Bret worked everyone this entire time. And he was at the announcer's table that night. And so, part of the story earlier, we mentioned the Sunny Days comment. Sunny having that connection of Bret and Shawn, the relationship with Shawn, the friendship with Bret, and Bret's family. So let's go to her book for a minute and read straight from her book, so this may take a minute. And she says, Bret and Vince always had a good working relationship. They always did well by each other. Bret definitely didn't want to do a clean job to Shawn that night, and Vince didn't want to argue about it. Vince sure didn't want to disgrace Bret by having him lose a clean match in his homeland of Canada. But Bret was leaving, and Vince needed that title off of him before he left. I think all parties involved agreed that if Bret lost the belt due to some kind of accident or screw finish, it wouldn't hurt his stature as a premier champion because he wasn't losing cleanly. So I think they agreed that when Bret was in his own finisher, the time when not a single person in that building would have ever believed he'd give up and lose, if they had the referee call the match, it would look like Bret got double-crossed. And it did look like that, and Shawn played it off beautifully in the ring and backstage, acting like he had absolutely no idea what happened. This would definitely save face for Bret and give Vince what he needed, a change of champions. And so, she says, from there, why do I think this happened? Well, I'll tell you. When Bret left Vince's locker room, I was standing right there. Vince emerged only a mere minute later with a black eye. Now, I don't know if you've ever been punched in the eye before, but I have. It takes a little longer than a minute for an eye to blacken like that. It will swell right away, but the black coloring takes a little while for the blood to come to the surface. Then we have my, and she uses quotes, forensic evidence. Yeah, that's what I'll call it. I've done many autograph signings with Bret, and he's left-handed. Now, if someone is a lefty, and they were punching someone in the face, wouldn't it naturally be the right eye that gets hit? Left hand to right eye, right hand to left eye? It would be uncommon for a lefty to throw a starting punch with his right hand. Now, on to our fifth person involved, Shane McMahon. Vince's son was in the locker room with Vince the entire length of the match, long enough for him to punch his own father in the eye and give it 30 minutes to blacken up. And when Vince and Shane came out into the hallway, they were both a little too calm for a scuffle to have just taken place a minute earlier. Vince walked by me, not even breathing hard. Now come on, if you had just got hit in the face, wouldn't your adrenaline be pumping a little bit? Wouldn't your face be red from your blood pressure rising? Nope, not a nothing. Not the slightest clue that anything had just taken place except for that, well, blackened eye. So after reading my deductive reasoning, do you think I should become a detective? Maybe, maybe not. But it sure as hell makes sense, doesn't it? I sure think so. So, we know Shane's right-handed.
Right.
And we can see it is his left eye. And many people have questioned that his black eye looked like makeup.
Huh.
And so, she did have one thing wrong, that she said Vince and Shane were in the locker room the length of the match.
Right.
We know Vince was ringside.
Right.
Shane was in the locker room the length of the match. But she does have a point. You know, all my years boxing, your eyes don't blacken that fast.
And as I mean, I don't remember seeing his eye right after on the Wrestling with Shadows movie. I do remember seeing him staggering. And now as I'm thinking about it, I mean, Bret may have written left-handed, but I mean, most of his punches that I saw him throw in the ring were rights.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's her theory on it. Did you ever read Dave Meltzer's reporting after the Screwjob?
I did not.
Dave Meltzer had actually reported that a week before the show, Vince McMahon had pitched to Bret Hart a finish where Hart would be screwed out of the championship at Survivor Series. Then the next night on Raw would punch Vince McMahon and knock him out. Almost exactly what happened, except the attack occurred off camera. And so, what's interesting is, had it happened on camera, everyone knows at that point it's a work. But it happens to happen off camera. The Wrestling with Shadows cameras are in the locker room as Bret comes back and is asking Shawn, were you in on that? And
Right.
Shawn's telling him no. Then the cameras leave, and then the cameras come right back in as he's dressing. Once again, he conveniently moves the cameras out of the way.
Interesting.
So, let's go now. We already established Bret liked to work the boys.
Right.
Is this another long drawn out of working the boys, and not only them, but working other people involved? Because as you mentioned earlier, what did Bret have at the end of his contract?
He had creative control.
Why didn't he sue Vince McMahon for this? Someone's that heated, that angry. He had creative control. He wasn't supposed to lose a belt. He did. Vince is in breach of contract. Bret doesn't file a lawsuit.
He didn't. Might have to do some more research to make sure that he didn't, but I don't think he did.
Yeah, to my knowledge, there's never been a lawsuit. And so, here's another question. Why would Vince make WCW's newest star a hot commodity?
Maybe as a favor to Bret. I mean, it's just so we can, again, like you said, to bring him back long term. Because Vince you never say never with Vince. I mean, he brought back the Warrior. I mean, he had talks with Hogan during some of that era too. So, I mean, you never know. You never know. He would have brought. Vince would have definitely brought Bret back.
So, last point, Jesse Ventura has also questioned this. And we know he's big on conspiracy theories, and he's questioned this and points out that it's in a world where everything is made up. Why not question this as well?
I mean, you definitely can question it. You are telling a story. You've got two rival companies. You've got, all this rival talent. It definitely makes sense. For it to question it. Why not question it?
And because of this was truly the catalyst of the Attitude Era.
Yes.
This was the creation that led to the evil Mr. McMahon against Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
Had this not happened, would it have worked?
I don't think so.
So was it strategically set up, long-term thinking that this needs to happen, or none of this will ever exist?
I think it was just set up that you had to get to Austin as your number one babyface. That's the direction the business was going. So if you're smart, you pay attention and you forecast out, okay, this is going to be the guy. And every good hero needs a good villain. In Montreal, you had your villain created, and the best things happen organically. The audience doesn't want to be fed.
So, but by saying that, you said at Montreal you had your best villain created. And if you're forecasting out, that means you knew that villain was going to be created.
But did you know?
So,
based on the reaction.
So if you didn't know, then that forecasting wasn't actually there.
Okay.
And so if that forecasting's not there, then was that supposed to be Shawn? And would it have been as big?
I don't think it would have been as big as if it was Shawn, because there's just so many variables in this that changed everything. I think Vince McMahon doing the interview, I think that helped make him more of a villain, and I kind of wonder how much the back injury played into it, what the plan was for Shawn in 1998 before the back injury.
Right. So, all the points I had.
Mm-hmm.
Now, opinion time. What do you think? Is it a work or is it a shoot?
It's a shoot. It's a shoot because you can't fake. I don't think that Shawn or Bret is that good of an actor that they can fake the emotion of, what Bret was feeling when everything happened. I don't think you can fake that. And I don't think you can fake how Bret wasn't the same when he got to WCW, and I think that Vince even said that he knew they wouldn't know what to do with him in WCW.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think it was a shoot, because if Vince had any fear of WCW doing anything to make Bret even bigger, he wouldn't have made a remark like, I was afraid that they wouldn't know what to do with him in WCW creatively.
And that's part of the reason I agree. I still, in doing all this research, it's interesting. It points out a lot of stuff that's, wow, could that have really been? But I believe they're all coincidental.
Yeah.
I believe it is a shoot. Like you said, I don't see why he would have put Bret in a spot to gain more attention from WCW. If the Screwjob was a work, he's arming WCW with, hey, here's your momentum to really run with this guy,
Right.
which could hurt him over here.
Right.
But yet, we know that when, back in the summer of '97, when Shawn sat down with Vince and talked about, just let me go be with my friends, Vince telling him, they won't know what to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
So he was already aware of that there was creative issues in WCW.
Right.
That they really didn't know how to handle all the talent. And so, I don't think he would have sent Bret if he was really planning on, let's take you off camera for a little bit, make you some money in the meantime, and then we're going to bring you back. I don't think he would have put him in a spot to, WCW may tarnish him.
Right.
So I think that would hurt him. I also, had it been a work, I don't see why 21 years later, they're still hiding it.
Right.
Which, the concussion angle that you mentioned earlier. Yes, they let that go for 10 years before they finally came out and said, that was a work.
Right.
So we've seen so many things over the years that have came out. This one's been 21 years. I don't see why they would still keep this hidden. And, one of the points earlier was mentioned that they renegotiated Bret's contract, but that the belt was already on Bret.
Right.
Because they talked about why would you put the belt on him with his contract and uncertainty. The belt was already on him. He won the belt in August. They restructured his contract in October. So September, October, somewhere around that point. So it's like he had already won the title.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Vince could have done it earlier, but one of your big pay-per-views of the year is Survivor Series.
Right.
And your money match that you've been trying to build to was Shawn and Bret.
Yeah.
So another thing that was interesting is why I also believe it's a shoot is the tragedy with Owen.
Yeah.
The tragedy with Owen and everything that happened during that time, all the investigations in it, I can't imagine during that time that this wouldn't have came out.
Right.
If this was fake, I would imagine it would have came out by now.
Absolutely it would have. And again, you can't fake that degree of animosity. You can't fake the emotion that Bret had during that time. And just for his time with WWE to end the way that it did, it's natural for it to take something away from, it's natural for it to take your heart, and then to have what happened with Owen happen. I mean, there was just so much just heat between Vince and Bret, and it took years for it to finally cool.
Yep. And that's my last point of why I think it's a shoot, is because it took until 2010 for Bret to come back.
Right.
WCW's doors closed in 2001. We know Bret's contract wasn't that long.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he had signed an extension, the extension was obviously over, because we know some people were signed to the WCW contracts where they could only appear on those networks. So that's why it took a lot of guys a little while to come over. And they were going to get their payout from AOL Time Warner. Where by the time Bret goes into the Hall of Fame, why not have brought him back then if it was fake?
And also, Bret had been released prior to WCW closing the doors. I was listening to Bischoff's podcast or in his archives, and I listened to his Bret Hart and WCW podcast. They had released him at some point in 2000 before the doors even closed. So he could have come back any time before that. I mean, what his role would have been, nobody knows because of the injury, but he could have come back any time from 2000, basically from the end of 2000 on, he could have come back.
Right, and so that's why I think if it was fake, at least before his Hall of Fame moment, you could have brought him back.
Right.
Or he could have been working backstage because they always thought he would have been great at helping develop the future wrestlers, you know, the future superstars, but they never did that.
Right.
And so that's where I believe that, yes, this was absolutely a shoot.
100%.
Alright, so thanks for joining us, and we will be back next time with Hell in a Cell.
Hell in a Cell.